blue.
Yes, of course. Ready and action. Hey, everybody, welcome to a brand new MMA Roasted podcast. It's me, Adam Hunter. I'm your host. We have a very, very special guest, two special guests today in studio.
No. Only I am not that special today. Trust me. I mean, I rode the short bus, but trust me, we got a real special here today.
You are extremely special, Josh. You are a former UFC champion, two-time. How many people can actually say that? Actually, someone else here can say that. Mark Kerr is here, the legendary Mark Kerr. I mean, this is like, I am so honored to have both you guys here. I mean, I actually, the first time I've ever watched mixed martial arts was watching The Smashing Machine.
Oh, right.
That was my, and now I was hooked after that.
Yeah.
And that was about you and your life and what you were doing. And how's everything going, man?
Everything's going good. Everything's going good. Just living life, and I have a great 12-year-old son, and that usually occupies most of my time.
Nice.
Trying to keep him in football, baseball, or golf, but
You don't have him wrestling?
No, he's actually starting to show interest in it now. So he's actually enrolled in, it's called Fight Ready back in Arizona, which is kind of like a parlay. So they have a little bit of jiu-jitsu, a little bit of boxing, a little bit of wrestling, and see what it gravitates to.
Now, are you still you're living in Arizona?
Yep.
Now, I mean, you are a guy, I actually watched The Smashing Machine again last night. And that was the first time I watched it in 20 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. It was still one of the most raw documentaries. I mean, how did that change your life, that documentary?
I think in a couple ways it crossed over to, I think it was the first real, MMA that crossed over to mainstream media. And I think that was the one where it exposed MMA to a totally different, genre of people. That was one. And then, from that point, it was, for me to look at it and watch it and see the raw reflection of what I was hard, So from where I was then and where I am now, I'm thankful.
I mean, to where you were, I mean, you were, you came on the fighting scene. We were talking before. I mean, you were a state champ wrestler from Ohio.
Yep.
Ohio State. You started in Iowa.
Yeah.
You and Pat Miletich were teammates.
I actually went to high school with him at Bettendorf High School.
In the Quad Cities?
Yeah. It's strange how that little tidbit, it feels like a Kevin Bacon kind of, relation. So it's just one of those where I think at the time, Pat was like a junior or senior, and it was my first year of wrestling. And Bettendorf was coming off, I think, their second or third state championships. It was a room full of studs. And so Pat used to throw me around.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, so you were the freshman. Was he cool to you, or was he kind of...
Actually, Pat was, believe it or not, he's one of the cooler guys. Because, you look at, a freshman in high school coming in, not knowing anybody, and he's actually one of the cooler guys. He really was.
Yeah, when I was a freshman, we got hazed. Even in college, wrestling was the worst. We had to shave all our heads.
I looked out. I did not get hazed coming in as a wrestler, but everybody kind of thought like, yeah, whatever, this big old goofy pile, like, ha, ha, ha. And then I started winning all the matches. And then I was the only guy on the team, like, winning everything. And then they're just like, well, fuck you, you're big. And I'm like, what the hell, man?
That usually is the default for hazing, is that if you're over a heavyweight or a 190 pounder, you can kind of get away with nothing.
Yeah, no one's picking on the big guys.
But then I just eat in front of them when I got to cut weight.
Yeah, right. By the way, Josh, I was actually we were talking on the way up here because we're in San Diego now at American Icon Autographs, where you could actually get signatures from Barnett and Kerr and everyone, all the other amazing stars. But we were talking about how you are a guy with just high school wrestling, and you beat Dan Severn, who's an Olympian, and you beat Randy Couture, two Olympians, and that's gotta have. I mean, you gotta feel pretty good.
Well, it's like I was telling you, Randy had been doing so much striking work in these matches, even leading up to ours. I didn't even know I was going to fight Randy at the time I did. I wasn't the first choice. I got the call, and I had 6 weeks, so I'm like, oh yeah, whatever, I'll do it. But I watched him against Pedro Hizzo. I watched him against Vitor Belfort. And I'm watching these fights, and he's fighting strikers, and he's using almost nothing but striking to win these fights. Yeah. And the occasional takedown. And he's training with Maurice Smith quite a bit, and so I'm thinking, all right, he's going to try and throw down with me on the feet. I'll work on this. I worked a lot with Reese Andy and some other guys up there in terms of wrestling. Because even though I only wrestled in high school, I spent all of my years in fighting always working with wrestlers like Matt Yushchenko or Tom Erickson when I could, or Rico Ciparelli, or one of my main training partners in my last few fights has been Tony Nelson from University of Minnesota. So I always keep real tight to my wrestling roots. You know, I consider myself a wrestler first, and everything branches off from that. And working with guys like Joel Sherritt. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to put hands on this guy. He wants to fight me on the feet, dirty box and all this. And each round I would come out, I'd line up on him, I'd throw a vicious right hand, he'd just shoot a double on fuck.
Yeah.
Down I go. I'm like, okay, I guess we're down here. Attack a bunch of subs and stuff off my back. We get back to the feet, throw some knees and up against the fence, and first round ends. Come out in the second round again, right hand, double leg. God damn it.
Now, I mean, were you talking any shit to him during? Like, come on, man, keep it on the feet.
Nah. To me, though, I was really surprised because, you know, we had trained together before, and, you know, the submission stuff was always really where I excelled. So I figured, well, he'd probably want to shut that element of my game down and not allow me to really be able to work it. And I knew that the fight was in my hands the minute, you know, I'm fighting him off my back, but I'm hitting with elbows and punches, and he's trying to land, but he's not really able to get anything clean in, and I'm doing a good job of tying him up. And then at some point he backs off and he tries to pass my guard, and I'm like, he never does that.
Yeah.
And as soon as he did that, I scooped into his leg, went after a leg lock, and then he bailed. I front headlocked him, snapped him, got on top, soccer kicked his body, and then just went to town.
Is that your favorite win?
It was a great win, I got to admit. Being able to fight, you know, Randy is a Washington native too. He's from Linwood, Washington originally. Yeah. Watching Randy go out there, win all those fights, become the champion, you know, he was somebody that I greatly looked up to. So there was no diminishing of Randy in my mind by fighting and beating him. That didn't really who he represented and what he represented as for me as a young athlete growing up is still a great, strong impression. And so, you know, I was always super proud watching Randy go out there and win.
You know, what's interesting about that, Josh, is from the first time when you and I competed against each other, you were young. I think you were
20.
I was going to say 19.
Yeah.
But from that first, and this is being straight up with you, from that first go, I knew that it was only a matter of time that you were going to make an impact on the sport. I mean, honestly, because literally it's just you didn't care. You just went as hard as you possibly could go, and literally, and I say this to whoever I'm talking to, it's just like the irony of us having to compete year to year, you know, 2 years in a row. The first time, I was hoping to God the second year, you're on the other side of the bracket.
I was actually thinking the same thing. I didn't think I was getting. I remember the first time I wrestled you, I was like, "This is what it feels like to wrestle your dad." You know, like God, you know, he's just. How do I? This guy is just. It just feels like a whole difference in terms of like physicality. Like I know I got stuff, but I can't make any of it stick.
Execute,
And you got north south on me the first year, and I'm like I couldn't remove you no matter what I did. So the next year I'm like, hey Matt, am I going? He's like, nah. I'm like okay. I kind of fucked around, and then all of a sudden he's like 2 weeks out. He goes, "You're going." I'm like, God damn it! All right, so I'm gonna do my best. And then the first round, I'm like, Mark, okay. The one thing I'm not gonna let happen is him get north south. I'm like, at one point, I'm like, I let you go after Mount. I'm like, I'm gonna do everything I can to try and find a way to attack. Just don't let him get north south. And at one point, you spin around in north south. I'm like, no. And I do everything, and I just left my arm behind, and it's like crank. I'm like, fuck, I forgot. Yeah, he knows how to do those too.
Yeah.
But all I could think of was, don't get caught in north south.
You know,
whatever you do, don't get caught in fucking north south. It was such a frustrating. It's like 5 minutes of being stuck in north south and being able to go
was he
nowhere.
the strongest guy you ever grappled against?
One of them, him, and well, I always tell people there's my litmus test for strength is like the Coleman.
Oh yeah.
Like you can only get as strong as Mark Coleman, and then it starts to become like the length of your levers or the weight behind you. It's like Bob Sapp is as strong as Mark Coleman, but he just had more weight or a longer lever at certain points. You know, just like a bigger body. But I remember the first time Coleman put me in a front headlock, I was like, Jesus fucking Christ.
I call old man strength for him.
Yeah, he
Literally,
just turns purple and just starts.
Different litmus test.
Man.
For strength. And one is as strong as I was, and as much as I trained and competed.
You were strong
Mark.
as shit, but you also felt more supple than Mark.
Yeah, and Mark was just, he's all horsepower. I mean, it's just one where, you know, not much flexibility. It was one way and straightforward. So
he just give you that fucking sideways look.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, man. And I tell Mark, and I'll tell him this very day, I go, look, I'm gonna take you down. I don't care if you got a walker or a wheelchair. I'm gonna tip that fucker over, and I'm gonna call two. Because I would shoot on him and pommel. And I couldn't get him on his back. You know.
But Mark, you were an Abu Dhabi champion, right?
Yeah.
And now, were you even? But you were still a white belt when you won it.
You know what's interesting? I don't even know how to classify belts because I had a brown belt in judo, right? And so going to jiu-jitsu, it was just with a gi on. It frustrated me. It was like somebody having being an octopus. So I'd go out to Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu and I'd roll with guys out there and they'd roll with gis, and I was doing it, I think, just to be polite. And then there was a point where I'm like, I'm never putting a gi on again, no matter what. But there's so many different elements that come into play.
But how frustrated are these guys? Because, name some of the guys you beat.
Mario Sperry,
Bustamante,
Carlos Bajeto.
These guys are
Bajeto was actually on a real surgence of his fight career and his grappling career. He was really kind of hitting his peak stride, and he was known for being, a big guy, but long, thin legs,
super long levers,
and good at using elevators. And he elevated Mark at one point, and fucking Mark basically just rode it, cartwheeled, landed, and then high fived him. It's like, you're not getting this dude off his feet. It's just not happening. And just to see these Brazilians being like, but with hand control and head control, Mark would just continually shut that game down and then just use good hips.
How frustrated these guys are that these guys are like third, fourth, fifth degree black belts, and this American wrestler.
They hadn't wrestled a wrestler that had an understanding of what was going on.
I think that was the different. When I first started fighting, at some point there was this introduction to Boss Rutan, Oleg Taktarov, Pedro Hizo, Marco Huaz. Those were the guys I'd go out to California and roll around with. And for the first 6 months, I probably tapped 20 times a workout session because I just wanted to get an understanding of what elements I needed to figure out. And then once I figured it out, I kind of just put my foot down and I go, okay, I think I got a good understanding of where the danger points are, of what positions they're trying to get me in, and what I need to avoid. And so it was just this whole learning curve where, thankfully I didn't have a prideful, going, well, I'm going to go in there and show them. So I think it was just taking that time to really try to understand what it is. I think that's what helped me at least transition into doing, the Abu Dhabi.
What I think of sometimes is I think that so you wrestled in college, you were a national champion, you beat Randy Couture in the finals.
Yeah.
Now, were you and Randy friends? Were you guys cool back then? Was there a rivalry?
What's interesting is that in Randy, and we'll have to scratch his head for this, we wrestled my junior year. Okay.
Yeah.
And when we wrestled my junior year, it was at Dual Meet. It was somewhere in Virginia, and he beat me. He beat me by gassing me. So
what does that mean? What does that mean by you were just tired?
Just tired
him out. Yeah.
Because one thing, Randy, he's what I call he's a pusher. Most Greco guys are pushers, so they just push and push and push and push, and it's a really, really heavy intensity. And the reason why I beat him in the NCAA championship, because every time he pushed, I changed my level, double legged him. That was basically it.
Right.
So from that one lesson, he beat me 5-4 my junior year, and then we met again my senior year, and the rest is kind of history.
But I think it's sometimes of parallel universes, right? Because I think, you wrestled Kurt Angle in the Olympic trials.
Yep.
And Kurt beats you by 1 point.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think, what if you would have beaten Kurt and you went to the Olympics and win the gold medal, and then Kurt goes on to MMA and becomes this big UFC star?
You're like my doppelganger,
Isn't that?
Do you think Angle could have been a fighter? He's got intensity. He knows how to work hard.
He does. And that's the one thing that I think from Kurt's perspective, the first 2 years we competed against each other, 93, 94, I annihilated him. He didn't score a point on me at nationals, the freestyle nationals in 94. And from his work from 94 to 95, I couldn't touch him. He literally just worked his way into being at a level that's equal to and greater than I was. So I know the work ethic was there. Whether or not he would have the stomach for it's a whole nother.
Yeah, that's that whole thing. What do you do when you get punched in the face?
Yeah.
How do you react to that? And then like talking in the smashing machine, it's like, well, I'm gonna get him back doubly, so that way, the odds are never even. I'm always going to get ahead. But then there's also those guys that are like, okay, well, they can take an extreme competitive angle version of it. They can take like I'm gonna just fucking kill you.
Yeah,
But there's always that mentality of I will win, no matter the cost. Whereas some guys are like, you know what, that's just not something I'm willing to deal with. Like they just couldn't. There's fighters, that have 30, 40 fights under their belt that still don't like fucking getting hit.
Yeah.
They're just like,
Yeah.
they're just not into
Well, look
it.
at Brock. Look how big and strong
Yeah,
Brock was.
yeah.
And then
He did better his last fight, but
did.
he's still flinching.
Yeah.
It's still not something that he's comfortable with. Or, Tito has never been. He's got good hands on the offense, but he does not like being on the end of them.
You know what's even? I was up at Big Bear and with Rico Rodriguez, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, and a list of a bunch of other people up there, and we would watch before Chuck got the push by the UFC, and they're pushing Tito. In their sparring sessions, the second that Chuck laid wood on Tito, he would just clam up.
Yep.
You'd see it in the fights. You see it in all their fights.
And he always just does a big high double shield, and he's not looking to see
Nope.
what's happening. He's not moving, so while he thinks he's protected, he's still a target.
Yeah.
So I was watching an interview, and you said you hadn't touched a drug till you were 26. And then that was what you became a pro fighter at, what, 26?
27.
27. So you're going to Brazil, right? This is real.
Yeah.
This is the real deal. You said you were broke.
Yeah.
You didn't know what to do. You go to Brazil, and you took, someone gave you, was it like those old high school after school specials where you're in the locker room and somebody says, hey man, try this?
I actively sought it out. It was one of those where I think my lack of understanding of what I was going to do, I think the saying at the time that I kept repeating in my head was, if you're going to a gunfight, bring a gun.
Right.
Type of thing. So it was one where at that point, competing and trying out for the Olympics and stuff, you're tested at the highest standards.
Well, you also know that when you get on that mat, the rules are going to be, in general, officiated across the board. You're going to have neutrality. You're going to be going to Brazil.
Totally different.
No, you're not.
No.
You're not. Coleman's telling stories about watching before Van Arsdale goes out there watching his opponent getting full on greased up with baby oil.
Yeah.
Like the hell? What?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But you're also not one of these guys. That like had no success before. You see some of these guys like they're 5-5, and all of a sudden they start taking stuff, and their bodies change, and now they go on a 10-fight winning streak. I'm not saying dos años, okay, but that was the word out there. But you're a guy. You had a lot of success without the stuff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you needed the stuff. Was it more nerves?
I think it was more of just in general lack of understanding of what I was getting myself into, and I just said, I thought in my head that I needed the extra edge, to be able to go down there and do it. It's just one where when I tell the story to people that don't understand it, I go, okay, my first fights were 3 fights one night, hotel, Maxute Plaza, really no time limits because they wanted somebody to be the winner, and you're going to fight in a room full of 900 Brazilian men. Are you in? That was kind of the thing going. I had no clue it was going to take the shape that it did and turn into what it turned into.
People need to remember that when I started fighting, when Mark started fighting, there were no just schools you could go and learn fighting. There wasn't there wasn't this general understanding of the environment that you were going to step into, where everybody has this like, oh, I can just go down to the UFC gym, La Mirada, or I can go here, I can go there, I can go to this Gracie Baja, I can do whatever, right? I can do jiu-jitsu, I can do kickboxing, go watch it on TV, it's all sort of an understood. To us, it was like, okay, you find what you can find. I didn't find an actual full-on fight school for being an MMA fighter until I'd fought 2 of their guys and two pros on their cards and won. And then it's like, oh, well, there's one in Seattle at AMC. That I knew of that. I knew there was a Lion's Den somewhere. I knew there was like, but where are these places? How does this work out? So, I went to Matt Hume, and
there's no internet back then.
Well, there was, but
it was dial up.
Yeah, it was Netscape Navigator, bro.
Did anybody? Is it like, hey man, there's this gym
I
that everyone
guys
knows
from internet chat rooms, by the way.
Really?
Oh yeah. I met this guy, and he's like, oh, I've been traveling around. I've had this many fights. I weigh this much. I'm this old. And like, what would you be interested in a match? I'm like, yeah, I'll fight you. I'm cool. I'm 19. I'm blah blah blah. He goes, oh yeah, I saw your fight with Chris Jarno. So I met this guy at the Washington Athletic Club. I sign in as a guest. Go up to the judo room. We close the door. We decide the rules. I just full out fight the guy.
Wow.
For free.
Wow.
Yes, and that's. I mean,
Did you win?
Yes, yeah. I won like 24 fights before.
Was
I
it a
ever
fight
lost
to the
one.
death? I mean,
No,
how did
no,
was there a ref there?
No, there was no ref.
So I mean, how did you decide this
He
fight's
gave up.
over? He just said it's over.
He gave up. And,
Did you shake his hand afterwards? Or?
Yeah, we sat and talked, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I think I'm going to come back out in the summer." Matt said he'd like me to come out and fight again on one of his cards. And so, even knowing that, then when I would go to the University of Montana's like rec center, they had the old wrestling mats from their program that used to exist, right?
Yeah.
And they had various martial arts programs, some certain stuff. And so what I would do is I would find anybody, if it's a kid hitting a heavy bag, some buff frat boy lifting weights, talk about how tough he is, or like some dude in a gi. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Hey, my name's Josh. I see you like fighting or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Hey, you ever watch UFC? Like, oh, yeah. What do you think about it? Oh, man, it's fucking cool, man. I love that stuff. Yeah, man, me too. Do you want to fight? And they're like, what?
Wow.
Like, yeah, we'll work
You're
out
like a
the
human
rules.
troll. Like, you're like, hey, buddy, how's it going?
And so, I mean, there'd be times where the upstairs mats, there's a climbing wall, there's like 4 full court basketball courts, and there's this cargo net hanging between the basketball courts and the wrestling mats, and then there's like a little room for cardio with like some small windows. It was kind of like the woman's workout room, but it wasn't really set up that way. It's just that's sort of how it worked out. So there'd be a girl on the stair stepper looking through the thing. There's people playing basketball, and so the balls can't come over into your area and all that. So that's why the cargo net's there. And I would just be fighting people up there.
Oh my God.
And all of a sudden people would be hanging on the cargo nets and like the background of the Street Fighter 2 area, and cheering as I'm beating the shit out of people.
Wow. Wow. Now what is it at that point?
And, that's the other thing is no one ever came to be like, hey, are you guys actually fighting? They just thought, oh, well, these guys must just be doing martial arts.
At that point, are you doing it to get better, or because
I need to get experience, and I trained with Jim Harrison and his Bushido Kan Karate school, which we did kickboxing and judo, and we'd full on go with guys, but I'm trying to express the lawlessness, the raw element back then of like, holy fuck, this was like 80s sports movie kind of montage shit. That's the world that Mark and I lived in. And so it's like, do you want to go down there and fight in front of this thing with these, there's this guy that they pulled out of a ditch in the jungle. There's this guy that pulls alligators out of the water with his bare hands. There's this guy who's it's just
him, right?
And so Mark's like, fuck yeah, I'll be there,
It reminds me of like one of the first UFC where the boxer shows it with like
Art Jimerson.
Art Jimerson, one glove.
So it just is one where that and what it is now is just, it's been cleansed.
But your second fight in, right? When you use your chin to put the guy's eye socket,
that was Bobish,
right? I mean, was that one of your like? Okay, did you practice that in practice, or?
I don't think my training partners would appreciate it.
Yeah,
that was just. I wanted like anything else. I just wanted the fight to be over.
He was a big son of a bitch too. Anybody that knows Bobish that would say, look, if Bobish knew how dangerous he could be, he would be near unstoppable. Like the guy was
huge, strong guy. I mean, with a super low center of gravity,
powerful, quick,
big, huge legs, and actually really nimble on his feet.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I remember watching the Smash Machine again last night. You go over to Pride because you're like, okay, the money's better, right?
Yeah.
But then you go there, you're like, hey, 3,300. You guys still owe me.
Yeah.
Is that what you were? I mean, I'm like, how bad was the original money? We're fucking 33. Like,
no, what I ended up doing, and this is what I told Pride. I said after my first year of fighting, I said I need to basically know how much money I'm making per month. I said if you want me to be successful, you got to put me on salary. And when I'm on salary, every time I fight, it's a bonus on top of the salary.
Okay.
That was what Ken would have people do with his old SEG contracts. Was Lions Den guys were on a monthly.
Yeah, and it stabilized my life. It allowed me. They were paying me at the beginning. It was like $8,333 a month. Going, this is your salary, and then every time that I fought like Hugo Duarte or some of the other guys I fought, I would get a fight bonus paid in cash. So just one where that level of stability was all that I needed.
Right.
And so if you look at like my first fight with Pride, they actually went from a company called KRS to Dream Stage. So the first 4 shows were KRS, and then they went to Dream Stage. That's when they got rid of the mobster, put legitimate people in there, and they started to, push it, mainstream. And so,
well, minus Hideki and Yukino.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it has a whole backstory to it, but it's just one where they ended up saying, okay, if we're willing to do this, we're going to push you. And I would go over like 2 weeks prior to an event. I would do TV, I would do charity stuff, I would do print, I would do whatever they asked me to do. And
they always pay you for that stuff too, which was cool.
Do. And it's just one where it got to a point where if you look at the little time frame, it's when I had to run off for Abu Dhabi, boom, 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 super champ, da-da-da. It just created stability financially, and that's what any fighter that's.
I feel like that they should do that right now with the UFC, put people on salary versus.
It is something that they could do. Like there is no set way that a company like UFC or any MMA company has to structure their deals, and they could just as a manager could go to the UFC and say, well, instead of doing this fight bonus, win bonus, let's
do a stipend.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know if the UFC would go for it.
Right.
It changed. It just, I know what it did for me.
Sure.
It's like that first $25,000. It's even funnier because I didn't read the fine print. Federico Lependa put in there.
Of course.
Maybe subject to
No
local taxes.
way.
Right.
Federico Lependa.
So he ended up paying me like 18 grand, right?
Right.
And so I chased him for that 7 grand. Basically, I caught him in California, and he actually did pay me. It took him a while, but I was like subject to nothing. You're going to the bank. So it was interesting.
Who'd you fight on that night? You fought Paul Varlins, Meister Hulk, and
Fabio Gurgel.
Fabio Gurgel?
Yeah. Actually, Alex, that was here earlier, that's his introduction to me. Like, that was his jiu-jitsu instructor down in Brazil.
Gurgel?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Didn't you fight Ebenezer Fonts Braga at one point, too? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are some, you know the names a little bit better, because unfortunately, when I unplugged from the industry, I unplugged. I mean, most people thought I died, rolled over in the corner, buried in some cemetery somewhere. But, the industry's growing enough now where, I'm going to put some stuff together. I can do seminars and do stuff like
Good.
that.
And I was actually showing my girlfriend, I was my fiance, I'm getting married this Saturday.
Oh, congrats.
But
Congrats.
I was showing her your video, and she was like, man, he should go to high schools and colleges and public speaking. She was like, this is exactly what kids need to listen to right now. I'm like, it's exactly what you should be doing, because I mean, who better than someone who's been through what you've been through?
Yeah, it's an experience where, thankfully, I think that besides the competitions and stuff, the one thing that has changed the whole paradigm in my life is being a dad.
Right.
I have a great 12-year-old son that if anything happened to me, I mean, the kid wouldn't even know what to do.
Are you still working at the car dealership?
Still working at the car dealership.
My little brother does that, and I have so much respect. That's a hard job.
It is.
Is this the first time you've met Mark?
Yeah.
Well, if I've known Mark for some years.
Yeah.
I can tell. Not because he's slick, but I can tell you that I can easily see Mark getting people to buy a car. No fucking questions asked.
I mean, my little brother wanted to know if you use the same.
He'll make you feel like
spirit.
you made the smartest decision you ever did by buying that car off him. I promise you. I promise you.
That's what my little brother Max wanted to know, if you use some of the same competitive spirit you use fighting.
You do. I mean, literally, you look at it like if somebody's sitting in front of you, you want to sell them a car, that's the only way you win. So it's just one where it's funny, in 2008, when the economy fell apart, when I literally walked away from fighting. I ended up fighting King Mo on like a 3-week notice. I literally, the money was where I go, I can't turn it down.
Right.
So, from that point going forward, it was like, okay, what am I going to do? The whole entire world economy had collapsed.
Did you save any money from your fighting
I
days?
saved a little bit. A little bit.
Do you still have your NSX?
Oh, I wish I did. That's one of those trophy pieces that I wish it was still sitting in a garage somewhere.
And the trouble about even stuff like that is if you would have just kept it to just turn it over now, you'd have still made money on the car.
Yeah. So it's interesting because a friend of mine that was selling cars at the time, he goes, here's the way you need to think about this. If you learn how to sell cars, you could actually move to any of the 50 states, have a job tomorrow that you can pay your bills with.
Right.
So that's kind of the idea, is that in every town there's, hundreds of car dealerships. You know, if you understand the business and you understand how to do that, you never have to be afraid of not being able to provide a roof and food and, you know, shelter for your family. So I took it on as that and going, okay, you know, now I'm looking at it like, well, now that MMA's blown up, I probably have opportunities out there.
Well, I was also like a college wrestling coach, seminars. Like I would think that, you know, you'd be very qualified for those.
Able to do it. Yeah. Well, it's with a friend of mine, you know, Rick Bassman.
Yeah.
So Rick Bassman is starting to put some stuff together, and Alex, who's, you know, friends. I mean, he's known Hoist Gracie forever. You know, Hoist in his network has 225 different dojos that he goes to. So they're going to help me get some stuff set up where I can get back out there.
Oh, good, because I feel like you need to be out there.
I do.
One of your fights against Igor. This was probably. I was watching that fight last night, and you went out there. You were winning the fight. Now, Coleman said you gassed a little bit. Mm-hmm. Did you gas? And we're like looking back at it now, 20 years later. You think? Do you think you would have won that fight had that not been stopped that way?
You know what? It's one of those things where, as a fighter, you have certain people on your list. I don't know if Josh has that list. That a list that, you know, no matter what, it's probably going to be one of the hardest fights you've ever stepped into.
Yeah.
And Igor was on that list for me. Going, he's Ukrainian. You know, his upbringing is totally different from ours. You know, he's fighting for every dollar, every cent. It's not like I am not, but it's just a different type of person. You know,
the guys from Dagestan now.
Those
guys are just like life or death for their money.
Yeah, it is, and that's kind of the one with Igor, knowing that I would have hoped I would have won, but it would have been an uphill battle. I mean, he hits hard. I mean, he hits extremely hard.
He's short and compact, and he just whips hard. Not only just his shots, but I mean, whips his hips, whips. I mean,
everything. It
wasn't until later in his. You could see there's a point where you see where Igor is just like, and you know, and then you see him start losing on the ground, like kind of, but getting worked over. But there's times even when a Bobish is killing him.
Yeah.
And he eventually gets back on the feet and then lays him out. And he'd been getting kneed in the head on his back for who knows
just
how long.
One of the toughest guys.
Scrappy.
I mean, we talked afterward. Even the second time that I fought him and lost to him, it was one where it was like he just was on the list going, I know I'm going to hurt. I know it's going to be hard. I know I'm going to have to do everything I can to win, just because when you add that level of toughness and grit and a talent, you know.
Who's on your list, Josh?
Well, Crow Cop's always just... You know, regardless that I've never been able to fight that guy 100%. Even 100%, he's going to be hell on wheels. Yeah. He's just so powerful and quick, and he's just a load, you know. At the top of his game, you know, I say he's one of the best to ever walk the earth. And it's just that level where, can I beat him? Yeah, I can beat him, but
it's going to be everything you got.
It's always going to be a hard one. It's always going to be a tough one. And while, you know, he got knocked out by Randleman. He got subbed by Minotauro. But I'm like, okay, I don't know if Randleman could have repeated that. But, you know, Kevin's explosive. He's a dangerous guy. And Minotauro was getting annihilated. He was practically knocked out at the end of the first round. Hail Mary diving tackle and managed to get him onto his back. Then he grabbed the rope to keep on mount. It's just like, all right. So I think this happens again. He gets chewed up, you know. But, hey, it is what it is.
Now, after that fight, you're crying. I felt for you. It was your first loss. I was like, holy shit. You know, I couldn't imagine what you've been going through. You've been a winner this entire time. And it was I felt for you. But your ex-wife, is it your current wife or ex-wife?
She's my girlfriend at the time, became my wife, now my ex-wife, but I'm here in San Diego with her.
Oh, it sounds like a really smart move. Okay,
what a story this is turning out to be. Yeah.
So your ex-wife is like, you know what? I knew he was going to lose. He only trained for a couple of weeks, and we were partying and drinking a week ago. Now, when you're watching the Smashing Machine, are you like, hey, listen, a little confidentiality? Is that is that true? Is that what happened?
No, it wasn't completely true. I mean, the saying is there's her version, my version, and the truth. You know. The truth lies somewhere in the middle.
Right.
You know, I was training, but also I was doing a lot of pain pills and all that stuff back then. And that, if you take it out and go, okay, I'm sober and I fight him, I probably beat him, but you put all the other elements in there.
Well, you did he wasn't supposed, the grounded knees wasn't sorted out at that point. And so that first fight got turned to a no contest. Yeah,
it did. Yeah.
But it's like a no contest while I'm getting front headlocked and kneed in the head while I'm tired.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I tell him afterward, I literally, this, like Mr. Ishii.
Yeah.
K1.
Watching you talk to Mr. Ishii, and Adam goes, look at him, he's talking to this Japanese guy. This guy has no idea. I go, Kancho Ishii does speak English, but at this moment, it's not even about whether or not Ishii understands him. Mark is just like, somebody has to fucking hear this right now because this is killing me. That I just got fouled and they stopped the fight.
Well, it doesn't matter what the decision is afterward. Everybody only remembers what happened in the ring. So he kneed me, they raised his hand, so that's what everyone remembers.
Yeah, that's what sets in their mind.
So it's just one where it's unfortunate. I know that, I know he's not that fighter that would go, oh, dude, I'm going to foul him, screw it. I know he's not that guy.
Yeah.
But the transition before Pride had so many things that didn't protect the fighters. You could be in a 3-point stance and they could punt your head. They had so much stuff in there, literally, and they tried to thin it out, at least have a little bit better, fighter safety, and that is why they took when you're down, you can't knee him to the head.
Well, look,
all that stuff was in.
Then they put it back in anyways.
Yeah, they did.
It can be hard to keep track of some of that stuff, but and who was also like that, which really surprised me at first because I didn't get to know the guy that well until after it was Crow Cop. Was that when I fought him the finals of the heavyweight open weight Grand Prix, I'm hurting from fighting Minotauro. Crow Cop's now he's laying in on me here on the ground, and I'm like, fuck it. So I scoop his leg and I'm going to try and go after a leg lock, and he posts out and he's trying to keep me from getting into it, and he accidentally eye gouges me like 2 knuckles deep. It's totally accident.
Yeah.
Right.
But at the time it's like both eyes shut, closed. I'm like I can't see anything, and I remember Bobish got eye gouged against Goodridge, and then I've seen another guy accidentally take an eye poke, and then they didn't stop it, and they're getting waylaid, and I'm just thinking, oh shit, this guy's probably going to let Crow Cop start trying to kick my head into the next row. So I tapped, but at the time, I'm thinking, fuck. When I see the replay, Crow Cop's like, oh shit, he knew he accidentally gouged me, and then Yuji and sees me grab my face, and Yuji looks, and so for once they would have been like, oh, something happened.
Yeah.
And now I've got lost by tap out due to strikes on my record, and it's like, Jesus Christ.
Josh,
but nobody understands like that situation in the heat of that moment.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think anyone's calling you a pussy, Josh.
well, I am what I eat.
No, right.
But then that would mean I'm an asshole too.
Speaking of which, do you look at these new guys, Mark, and think to yourself like, this, I was a fighter. Some of these guys were fighters too, but they're athletes, and this is sort of a,
I'm real curious to hear this. I really am.
I've
got some.
Do you look at these guys and go, what I did was fighting? Like we were headbutting and eye gouging and kicking and stomping and fighting with no weight classes and no rules. And these guys, it's sort of it's fighting, but it's not what I was doing.
It's different. To say it's different is like going, I don't even know what a parallel is, but, like really what you were doing, like going around to college and fighting, that's what we were doing in a ring and getting paid for it. And that's the difference.
The first time I got money, I was like, oh shit. I was hearing a hook and shoot at the time, like, we play like a minimum of $350. Like $350, that's great. Like, wow, when can I get $350?
Yeah, it's changed. I think the whole entire premise of MMA was like, okay, which discipline's the toughest? Just take who you are. Doesn't matter what you weigh. Doesn't matter how long it takes. We're going to figure this out.
Yeah, every tournament was basically like a movie script. We're going to bring these guys in from all over, and we're going to set it all up, and then see who comes out on top.
And that really, I think, was more of a true measure of like really what your grade was as a fighter. Going, hey, dude, we're going to whittle the rules down to the minimum. Don't grab his nuts and don't poke him in the eye.
Yeah, don't bite.
Everything else is on board because it's almost like, hey, guys, we're going to throw you in this locker room. We need one of you guys to come out.
Right.
Okay. And that was literally the feeling going into fighting was like, okay, I'm in a locker room. I need to come out.
Yeah, but you understand, we were down. We didn't. We were totally for it. And you couldn't say that anybody there was forced to be there. They were like, we could all have our external reasons, but at the end of the day, we truly wanted to fucking be there. We wanted to do that. The there was it felt so special to see some of these events at that time too, because it would be such a like, oh my God, they got that guy and then they got this guy. Oh, I can't believe that they put this whole thing together. How wild is that? And I've said for years that fighting isn't alike in a lot of ways. Of course, there are things that us in the early days would not have been prepared for with the media stuff and how to manage a career and to navigate those business end of the waters. But the fighting part of it, so different. So this guy, this local promoter, wanted to put on an 8-man one-night tournament, which you can still do in California, but it's like you have to limit the total fight time to 25 minutes. That's their gimmick on that.
Okay.
And he's like, I want to do this one-night tournament. And I got my guy, and I go, we're down. He fought Kyokushin, karate as a 19-year-old kid, as the youngest ever in the world open weight tournament. So, yeah, we're all good. This is what I come from. Like, this is how we fight.
Background, yeah.
And couldn't get 8 guys to agree to that. Like, most of them was like, no way, I'm not fighting 3 times in one night. And I'm like, really?
Yeah. That's where it started.
Fuck, that's what we were about. And the show up like that, it was just like, all right, here we are, let's go, let's put this together. And I remember talking about the difference between fighters in the day and the passion to just get out there and fight, and like, what are the rules for this one? All right, good, let's go. What have you? No gloves? Cool. Headbutts? Awesome. Whatever, we're all here to do it. And I remember after this it was a UFC, it was one of those press conference calls, and Benson Henderson goes, no, you're right. I don't want to do that.
Right.
I wouldn't want to be. I don't want to do any of that. I like, this is cool. And I was like, wow, I can't believe somebody's actually. But it's fine with that too. I mean, no one can take away what a lot of these young, awesome athletes are doing, like a Benson Henderson.
Yeah,
but
I mean, the cool thing is the sport, because where it's grown, it's pulled in just some incredible talented guys. It really has. And still, like anything else, man, the thing that I loved about wrestling, even though I was a big guy, is that you could be 135 pounds or 145 pounds, and you could be a world champ.
Right.
And there's no other sport really you could do that with. It can't be a pro football player. You might baseball, So it's given guys opportunities. I mean, I can appreciate where the sport has come from and where it is. It just there's
just a little different.
It's a parallel.
Now, do you watch it now at all?
You know what? I started over the last couple of years watching it. A lot of times I get frustrated because I get so much anxiety watching it that I can't watch it and enjoy it. Because how much it hurts. Like watching somebody take a headshot or watching I know how much it hurts, and it makes me cringe. So sometimes the anxiety level, and in the last year I've been able to actually sit and enjoy it and, watch. I like the technical part of it. I like when you get a really good, people might think it's boring watching 2 guys on the ground, but you get the camera angles. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Oh yeah. You can see somebody totally, working their game, and it's interesting where the sport is now.
Mayweather McGregor. My personal opinion, this is going to go 3 rounds tops. I don't know why they're doing this. I mean, I know why they're doing it.
Of course, we know why they're doing it.
But I just feel like
the
this
name
is
of the fight. It's called Cha-Ching in the Ring.
Really? Who do you think? How do you think this goes down?
I mean, as an MMA fighter, I'd love to see McGregor knock him out. I mean, I really would.
It would do something for us. Yeah.
The statistically saying, I mean, the odds, I don't even know what the odds are now, 1 to 20 or something. I mean, it's just one where I would love to see him knock out Mayweather. I've never liked Mayweather, never, just one where it's just not an athlete I followed or enjoyed or anything like that. So, of course, I like to see McGregor knock him out.
Me too. But what do you think?
I get why people don't like Mayweather, and a lot of that I feel is constructed. I mean, it's one way to get someone's attention. Yeah. But as his ability, his defensive and boxing work has always been a thing of beauty to mine, something I've tried to emulate in some ways, which must be unsuccessful with the amount of times I seem to be getting hit. But I think, I don't know, 3 probably. I think it's like 4, maybe 5. I think McGregor's endurance will be up. But he's going to get tired missing.
Yeah.
Hitting Mayweather, and at that point, once that gas tank starts to diminish, because the pacing and the timing, and everything.
So round 5, you think? Round 5, round 6?
By 5 or 6, that's going to be the end of the fight, and I don't think it's going to be because Mayweather just completely shuts his lights out. But I think he's just he's going to gas, he's going to dig his body up, and
so how does?
But I'd like to see Conor give a great showing, or put his lights out. I mean, that would make something great for
Huge
MMA.
For MMA.
Yeah.
I mean, it really would.
So how does
really
Prime Mark Kerr? I don't care if you're on stuff, okay? I'm talking about 1997, androgen, whatever the fuck you took. All right, Mark Kerr against today's heavyweights. How does he do?
Today's heavyweight. So one thing that I would say is if I had,
You fuck them all up. Come on.
I would. I just, you know what? And this is what I say. I said what made me really good is I can turn anybody that has any discipline. I can make them wrestle me. If I make you wrestle me, I'm gonna win. If I turn it into a fight, you know, the guys are so technical now, some of the heavyweights. I mean, it would take me probably 2 years with the best boxing and Muay Thai coaches to get to that level they are now. I mean, right now you got some great strikers.
Yeah, but you go against Stipe Miocic. You just double leg him and pound him
down to the ground and
Well,
pound.
you got to figure if we're talking Mark Kerr in his prime, however that concoction is created, doesn't
Right.
matter. None of that.
Right, right.
All taken out of the main thing is that Mark's going to be, as I talk about him as he's sitting right next to me.
Yeah.
He's going to be in the environment with the gym setups that we have now,
Yeah.
with the
Big
training
difference.
systems, with all the training partners, with having the specialized coaching come in. I mean, I don't think you could help but see a better Mark
Yeah.
Kerr
I
than even
agree.
the one you saw before.
So
because-
Prime Mark Kerr versus Prime Brock Lesnar. How does this fight go?
Oh, I'm taking Brock out.
Yeah.
I'm taking him out.
Josh?
I think a good scramble, a couple takedown, goes here and there, but eventually, Mark gets on top, starts going to town. Now, of course, this is old school UFC rules, so there's
Yeah,
headbutts and
yeah.
elbows.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to actually implement that.
Yeah.
Right.
Put that in there. It's a game changer.
Now, I got to say, it did seem like your girl, Dawn, a very attractive girl, sexy. I see why you would like a girl like that, you know? But it did seem like, in a way, she was like, hey, you stayed with her instead of training with Boz in that Prime Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Do you look back and be like, I know it was good pussy, right? I know.
Years down the road.
I mean,
Yeah.
but looking back, are you just like, fuck? I wish I would have done a little.
Yeah, I mean, part of it, and I've said this before, she's been always kind of that little bit of kryptonite for me. Just one of those where, looking back on it, and I had spent 3 more weeks out there, probably would end up being in a totally different story.
Right.
Tickles your
totally
prostate and breaks your heart.
different.
But she did help you get sober.
Yeah.
She helped you get
Yeah.
clean.
Yeah.
I mean, no one else
She's
was.
a great mom.
No,
She's a great mom.
now when you're juiced to the gills and you're going out there and you're just your coaches, right? Like that scrawny guy behind you. Who was that guy? There was some guy behind you that was like.
I think you're talking about my brother.
Was it your brother?
Yeah,
but
one of them.
now, are they saying to you, look, Mark, like, come on, man, you got to get off this stuff, or I'm worried about your liver? Or, is anybody telling you this, or is it just your girl?
You know what? It was just her. A lot of the environment. I think.
It would be hard to talk Mark out of any of it because he would
that's
go,
part
now
of
let me
it."
tell you here. So there's this peer-reviewed study and this, and then that they were saying in Japan with
Right.
they're eating this type of seaweed, but within that seaweed, and everyone's like, no, he knows exactly what he's talking about.
So, were you one of those guys with the bodybuilders who, like, within 5 minutes, you're convinced that everyone should be on stuff?
Well, I did back then. I mean, it was hard because the internet was in its infancy. I mean, I would order books online and do all this stuff. So I did a lot of reading and I did a lot of trying to understand what I was doing in my body. What I look back on is that most of the people around me were basically yes guys.
Yeah.
They were sitting on the coattails. They're waiting to be drug along with them. A couple guys were my paid training partners. So, it wasn't them having me go, hey, Mark, you need to pump the brakes. You need to slow down. Or, my whole attitude was I'll clean it up when I'm done. I'm going to rush ahead as hard as I can. And then when I crash and fall, I'll figure it out.
Were you, Coleman, and Randleman injecting each other in the butts? Was it like, were you guys back there?
We actually, all 3 of us trained a ton together. But no, we did our own
They
stuff.
probably all got into like wrestling matches in hotel rooms out of nowhere because I've been a witness to that myself.
Yeah.
By the way,
Yeah.
Mark Coleman is a fucking great storyteller. He will have
yeah.
you laughing your ass off.
And
That
I-
guy, man, fuck, he's so funny.
He's amazing.
me.
He's one of my favorite people.
I love Mark.
Him, and also I've had him on the podcast numerous times. He's amazing. And Randleman was my favorite guest of all
what
time.
a wild card that
Man,
guy
that
was,
was-
man. Rest in
Broke
peace.
my
man.
heart, man. Broke my heart when he died.
Do you think he could have been one of the best ever?
Yeah.
He was.
Oh, yeah.
He had a
Athletically,
talent.
but put it this way. Before I wrestled Randy Couture, my senior year, it was Kevin's sophomore year, I think. And he had already lost his freshman year in the NCAA finals. And he's getting ready to go. Him and I warmed up together, right? He grew up in Sandusky, Ohio. I grew up in Toledo. They're 60 miles apart. And so him and I warm up, and he looks at me right before he's going to run out, and he goes, "Be ready. It's going to be quick." And I go, "Okay." So literally runs out, and I'm not going to remember. I think the guy he wrestled was a guy named Olson from like Nebraska or something. And I'm listening to the crowd. You hear the crowd. You hear the crowd like, "Yeah." The crowd dies down, and then you hear the crowd pop again. And literally see Kevin running back through the tunnel.
No way.
I told you it'd be quick. Yeah, he decked him in the first like 2 minutes of the first.
He was
Man.
unbelievable. Now a fight that he always wanted that I always wanted in their primes. Randleman versus Tito.
Oh.
People always debate who would have won.
It had to do with it's all about Randleman's head, but Kevin would have put. I mean, I'll give Tito some credit that he managed to take his wrestling in MMA and be very effective with it.
Yeah.
But
Not at the level
Randleman
Kevin
would have
was.
just.
Kevin was a 3-time NCAA finalist, 2-time NCAA champ, and he got kicked out his senior year of Ohio State.
Right.
So you imagine he could have been one of the few. There's a handful of guys that are 4-time NCAA
Yeah.
finalists.
Yeah.
He would have been a 3-time NCAA champ, and literally the guy was just a freak of nature. He really was. He had incredible quickness, explosiveness,
And
just,
toughness. I mean, he
unbelievable.
pulled the wires out of his wired up jaw out to
Yeah.
go, and it's just like with pliers.
Craziness too,
He's
yeah.
nuts. Yeah, bonkers. You know, I fight. We fight on the same card. We say like, "Oh, what's up? Yeah, I'll see you out and about." Blah blah blah. In Atlantic City, Kevin leaves. I go off. As I'm rolling back into the hotel, I hear all this screaming and cussing, "Motherfucking!" I'm like, "What the hell is he?" And I turn around the corner, and it's Kevin. Now it's like 3:00 in the morning. Like, what the? And he's like, "Man, this guy fucking pistol whipped me." And I go, "What the fuck did you get yourself into?" Yeah. Somehow he got into some pissing contest, like war of words, with an off-duty cop in Atlantic
my
City.
God.
Which, you know, who knows? You know what kind of off-duty cop you have in Atlantic City.
Was it when he fought Randy that
I
weekend?
don't know. It was either that one or when he fought. I don't remember who. And this guy pulls out a pistol and pistol whips Kevin in some club, and I'm like, "Only you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Only you." Also, first time Kevin meets my parents, he drops his trousers to show me how Pedro Rizzo had kicked him in the inside of his quad and how it had torn. And my mom's just like, "The hell?"
That's awesome. Now I gotta say, now, looking back, I know you don't want to have regrets with the girl, right, with Dawn, because you guys had that, but all the Asian pussy that you could have gotten. I mean, do you look back and just say, well, like you could have been the king?
Josh can testify to some of this. If I went to Roppongi and I just stood on a corner at my height in Japan, within 30 minutes I'd have 50 people around me.
Wow.
It's crazy.
But I forget about the guys, though, but the women.
The women, it's... Oh, God, I can get into it.
You could have.
No, get into it. Tell us what happened.
Now, there's, just some of the Japanese women. I mean, I don't even know how to describe it.
Was it orgies? Were they throwing themselves at
Throwing
you?
themselves at me and extremely, extremely tight boxes.
Wow. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, extremely, like trying to shove it in a crack in a drawer.
Wow. So you did hook up with a lot of Asian girls. Okay,
Yeah,
all right. Okay, so when your girl says I'm jealous, okay, that now
it makes sense.
Now it all makes sense.
Right? It's an athlete and sense of entitlement. You know,
Yeah.
over there. If I'm over there, it's not really like the rules apply.
It's not cheating.
Country.
Okay,
Plus,
so-
you're just sampling the
Different time
culture. You're
zone,
getting, you're learning their customs.
So this-
that's how you squeeze down on a.
So this podcast is gonna be called "Mark Kerr Likes Tight Asian Pussy." By the way, that's gonna be the head of
Does
this.
anybody not like that? Is there like
know, right?
is there a segment of men out there
That
or
don't
women
like to-
that are just
yeah.
like, yeah, could you have the biggest blown out box I've ever seen in my entire life? I'd like to be
probably-
able to throw my head in there and look around
Can you
and maybe
make-
store a few things for later.
Make sure she says she's had triplets. Make
Yeah.
sure that's. I'm sure there is a fetish for everything. There's probably a fetish.
Yeah, that's
for-
the thing. You know, that's
Yes.
/B on fucking 4chan. If there's not If there's not porn of it, it must be made.
Okay, so you didn't miss out on that much.
No, I didn't. No,
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't.
That makes me feel better. Honestly,
You know, not even just in terms of like them throwing themselves at you. I mean, you would get a female fan will come up and literally be like, "Can I have a kiss?" And you're like, "Oh my, what?"
Yeah.
And then just start weeping and shaking and
Crazy.
falling apart. Yeah. It's,
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Never experienced anything like it. And Josh could testify to this. Some of the politest fans in the world.
Yes.
But fanatical.
Yes.
Fanatical.
100%.
I mean, like you could walk out and you like you're saying. I mean, a woman shaking, her hand shaking, her almost weeping because you signed or.
So you must have been. A part of me is like, okay, what could have been if I? But I mean, you were the UFC champion, you were the Pride champion.
Yeah.
You're getting tons of Asian pussy. You're making money. You're beating people up.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad at all. I'm envious, man.
Mark had some the stories that he must be able to tell from Abu
there's some good
Dhabi.
ones, man.
I was there in Abu Dhabi, and I remember what a nutso place that was,
Yeah.
and just hearing like from hour to hour, day to day, like all of a sudden, like, oh no, so and so is putting this money down on like
Yeah.
what the fuck?
I call it
this
the Billionaires Boys Club.
Yeah,
man.
for
I mean,
real.
It literally was, and I don't know if Josh or my first year there, Guy Nevins, who did all the booking and stuff. Guy calls me up. We agree to like a $15,000 parents fee, and I go $15,000 for grappling.
Yeah,
go,
sure.
I'm in. So I got sick before the first year. I had something called folliculitis, which is related to
it's like
chicken
staph,
pox.
and
And all my hair follicles got infected. I had lost a bunch of weight. I think there I was probably like maybe 218, 215 somewhere. So I show up, everybody sees me, and I'm like all thinned out, and they're like, "Oh God, like something's wrong." So I tell guys, I said, "Listen, I'm only competing in one event, one match, and then I'm done." So I do the one match. The Crown Prince calls me up after the match is over.
Yep.
That's again Carlos Bejeto calls me up and he says, "I need you to continue." And I said, "I'm really not feeling good." I said, "You can look, all my hair follicles are infected." And he goes, "If you continue, I'll give you another $25,000."
Wow.
So I'm like, "Okay." I go, "Okay." So I do the next match and I say, "I'm done. I'm exhausted, physically exhausted." And he does the same thing. He pulls
Just
me
keeps-
up to the hotel
yeah.
room and he goes, "I'll give you another 20,000." And I'm like, "Oh God." I'm like, "Okay." So I forget what the purse was. I think the win purse
supposed to be
was
like 50 or something like that.
So it turns out where I go from 15 to 25 to he ends up basically getting the semifinals, going in the finals. I walk home with like $95,000 in cash.
Wow.
And no contract, no nothing. It was just his word, handshake, And so I'm thinking, like Josh is thinking, well, how much money did he make off of me?
Yeah.
Right.
If he was willing to pay me that, and he's betting with his other buddies,
Yeah.
how much money did he really make off of me?
Yeah,
That's-
they would go nuts about it. I mean, even when they held a raffle the second year for like the first year of the Audi TT, they had a Porsche, they had all this
Wasn't
stuff,
like a Range Rover
yeah,
Discovery,
all this kind of stuff,
Ski-Doos and
all this
stuff.
shit,
Yeah,
right?
it was
And a
crazy.
raffle.
Yeah.
Kerr, have you thought about going?
So all of us are buying like a couple tickets here and there.
Yeah.
There are guys in the audience that bought like $150,000 in tickets just so that they could win. And I'm like, you could have bought most of this shit for the money that you paid for the fucking tickets, but they wanted to win.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different way of living. Not to mention, pretty hilarious to be sitting up there and you don't see girls on the street. You don't see all, like the actual natives of the UAE. They're kind of shielded away from it. All you ever really see is like Filipino or Pakistani, like day
That's all
labor
you see is the
workers.
workers, yeah.
But yet you look up in the audience and there'll be like a hefty dude with some skinny dude behind him just like squeezing his boob the whole time. You're like, that is so strange. I mean, you're just like, is that how you get into your matches? Is you grab a hefty guy's boob?
That's crazy.
I mean,
Yeah, there is some
if you're into it, I get it, but in public?
Yeah.
That is weird. Have you thought about writing making a book or like making it into a movie? Or?
Yeah, I've thought about putting a book together. I think the timing. I looked at it maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, and MMA hadn't grown to the point it is now. And now they I think what I heard last is like the second most popular sport in the world behind soccer. So I think it has more of a. I think if I do a book at this time, it would have more of an impact than if I did one 5, 6 years ago.
Has Dana White reached out to you?
I haven't talked to Dana in probably 15 years.
I mean, you should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I mean, why shouldn't you be in the Hall of Fame?
Part of it, and I explained this to Sean, when Bob Meyerowitz, the old owner of the UFC, was selling it to Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta, right? The documentary was being made, and Bob Meyerowitz was fire selling anything related to the UFC. So we bought a bunch of footage And so the new owners, Frank and Lorenzo, found out that HBO was going to air this documentary. And they went to HBO and they said, we want to see the documentary before it's going to air, thinking they could stop it if it wasn't something they agreed with. And so HBO basically said to them, you can watch it when it premieres, January 19th, like everybody else. And so I think from that point going forward, it always created a little bit of animosity. And so now the new owners, I think it might be a different perspective for them.
I mean, there's no reason right? Shouldn't he be in the Hall of Fame?
Mark is pretty pivotal in terms of American heavyweight fighters, for sure. And there is a great case to be made for him being a Hall of Fame UFC, because Mark fought before the single super fight eras too.
Yeah.
So there was no like what would you call it? No unilateral heavyweight champion, right?
Yeah.
That didn't exist yet. So the 4-man tournaments were these sort of things they would just put together.
Yep.
And you would be a UFC champ of these individual tournaments, you know.
I'm a huge Uriah Faber fan, but Faber never won the UFC belt.
Yeah.
This guy won it
Did
twice.
He never did?
No. I mean, he won the WEC belt.
Yeah, he was a very that was his.
Dominic Cruz is his kryptonite.
Yeah.
I mean, first time I ever watched Dominic Cruz fight, I was just like, "Oh my god!"
I gasped.
I've never seen.
I sat on
anything
the couch and fucking passed out. Just he doesn't stop moving. He's
No.
I always refer to him as like a fucking squirrel on crack. He's just like all over the place.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it's the point which made it even more amazing. My first time watching him, it's left leg forward, right leg forward, up, down, change level, this side, that you can't track him. It's just like you don't know where it's going to come from, but it's going to come. You know, it's amazing. He's one of my favorite fighters.
I'm
Just
sure he'd be
because-
happy to hear that.
Well, it's just because of the uniqueness that he brought. He brought an element to fighting that, like, it's not the stand up and, you know.
He's just so smart. You talk to that guy, he's an encyclopedia. I mean, he knows all he's doing is studying fighting. That dude.
It's incredible. And part of that's like Mike Tyson, what made him great. He was a student. Man. He'd go back and watch old films and, you know, take a look at it and see where the heritage of what he's doing comes from. So
yeah, exactly.
It's big.
Well, listen, Mark, it was such an honor to have you on, man. I if you would have told me, and Josh, back in the day, hey, listen, I'd be talking to Josh Barnett and Mark Kerr. I mean, who the
You'd
fuck
go,
am
what
I?
the fuck happened to my life?
No,
That's what you'd be saying, like,
no
Jesus
way.
Christ.
No, you know what he'd be saying? Whose dick did I have to suck?
Yeah, exactly. Some
This
sheik in
interview
Abu
ain't
Dhabi. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Well, listen, you could see me, guys. I'm doing comedy July 3rd to the 9th in Las Vegas, UFC Fight Week. If you want to come to a show, Mark, where are you going to be?
I'm going to be here actually for the next 3 days, and then I'll keep you posted. I'll be doing some seminars, and I'll give you that info. You can pass it along.
Now, why do you have no Twitter account, no Instagram?
No, man. I'm like, you know what? I'm not quite a millennial. I'm kind of that.
But fuck millennial. You need people want to. People, you would be surprised. Kevin Randleman, like the week before he died, I came out. I did a Periscope with him where fans were asking him questions, and he couldn't believe it. You know, and I think a lot of the old timers, they don't realize the impact.
I could only see Kevin Randleman tweeting in all caps.
He fucking he's like, oh my god, I could do this like from home. I think a lot of times
That also would have been highly entertaining to see Kev tweeting. Oh, because the interviews he would give sometimes, they go, Mark, I go, Coleman, man, what the?
Yeah.
He just look at me and go,
Shake his head.
man, I don't know, man. It's just Kev. You know, fuck.
But Mark, I honestly really think that you'd be surprised on how, like when I said I'm going to have Mark Kerr on the podcast. I got flooded with people going, smash machine, holy shit. Sean McCorkle said, a guy who beat Mark Hunt in under a minute said, you're the reason he got into fighting.
Wow.
All these people were saying they couldn't believe it. And I honestly think that sometimes, you're sitting there, you're kind of in your own bubble, but you don't realize how many people you've actually affected and touched. So I would have. That's the one thing where social media, aside people telling you that you suck and shit.
I know how many people I've touched. And that's actually been kind of part of my problem. My issues with the law has been about how many people I've touched and perhaps where I've touched them.
Yes, of course,
so,
Josh.
Nonetheless, I still am on social media.
But please, man.
I think this is encouragement. This whole thing out here, talking to Sean, talking to Alex, and just a couple other coincidental things that it's going to give me the push I needed to. Really
you should honestly
engage.
I have 68,000 followers on Twitter. So if you first day you start up, okay. I will say, guys, this is really Mark Kerr.
Yeah.
You'll at least have 7 followers by the end of the day. So, Josh, what do you have coming up?
I am calling. We'll be doing. Me and JR will be doing Dominion on the 27th. So I hoping that'll push out by Friday. So we're calling that New Japan action. Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada 2, which I know people are pretty hot to see. But leading off from that, July 1st and 2nd in Long Beach, me and Jim Ross will be calling the action live for New Japan Pro Wrestling in their first ever mainland America professional wrestling show. It's been sold out. It's sold out in 5 minutes both days, and so that's going to be fantastic. I may have a couple seminars coming up here. One in Orange County, one in BC. In August, I will have dates on that on my social media, which is at Josh L. Barnett on Twitter and on Instagram. Other than that, just doing my classic car stuff, trying to get a few projects off the rack and onto the road. And, every now and again getting suckered into coming onto this janky ass podcast.
Thank you, man. No, you're a legend.
Well, although I have to a big shout out to Cold Steel Knives and supporting my team and everything that we do, as 2 of my guys fought just last weekend at CXF in Burbank. AJ Bryant won his fight in the first round by TKO, and Shohei Yamamoto in the first round of the 8-man King of Cali 155-pound tournament took his undefeated fighter out in 22 seconds.
Wow.
With a great counter left hook, and won the interim title at the very same time and moves on to the second round of the tournament. And I've been working with Travis Brown leading into his fight against Alexei Olenek July 8th.
And how's Travis looking?
Travis is looking great. I'm really glad with a lot of the work he's been doing, and I just seeing his growth throughout the process is a really, really fantastic.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you for doing the podcast. Kerr, you're a legend.
I appreciate it.
Barnett, you're a legend. And I want to thank our sponsor, Blue Apron, the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. Blue Apron's mission is to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone. And Blue Apron achieves this by supporting a more sustainable food system, setting the highest standards for ingredients, and building a community of home chefs. Blue Apron has established partnerships with over 150 local farms, fisheries, and ranches across the U.S. And as a result, their seafood is sourced sustainably under standards developed in partnerships with the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch. They have beef, chicken, and pork that come from responsibly raised animals. I'm telling you, Blue Apron can be delivered to 99% of the continental U.S. and 99.5% of food deserts. And because Blue Apron ships the exact same amount of ingredient required for a recipe, they are reducing food waste. Listen, people, cooking together builds strong family bonds. Research shows that Blue Apron families cook nearly 3 times more often. And those who spend a lot at restaurants, at high-end grocery chains, can now spend under $10 per person for a delicious meal. Listen, this upcoming meals are warm smoked trout and asparagus salad with fingerling potatoes and garlic croutons, spiced zucchini enchiladas with creamy lime and tomato rice, elote-style vegetable tostadas with summer squash, poblano peppers, and cilantro rice, and peach honey glazed chicken with mashed sweet potatoes, collard greens, and Thai basil. Listen, not all ingredients are created equal. Fresh, high-quality ingredients make a real difference, so it's important to know where your food comes from. I'm telling you, me and my girl, we have Blue Apron night. I feel like I'm Emeril Lagasse. I feel like I'm an amazing chef. We have it's romantic, it's sweet, it's delicious. I'm telling you, Blue Apron. Go to blueapron.com/MMA Roast and get your first 3 meals free with free delivery service. Go to blueapron.com/MMA Roast. It's unbelievable. You got to check out Blue Apron. Blueapron.com. I'm telling you, you're going to love it. I will not steer you wrong. I look forward to our meals getting delivered and cooking, and I look forward to eating. And I feel great, and I look better. I'm healthier. I know what I'm eating. Check it out. blueapron.com/MMA Roast. And thank you for listening to the podcast.